ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुक्तकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं श्रीकृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्ता राधाकान्ता नमोऽस्तुते। तप्त काञ्चन गौरांगी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। नमो महावदान्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायिने कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नामिने गौरतुषे नमः। पञ्चतत्त्वात्मकं कृष्णं भक्तरूपस्वरूपकं भक्तावतारं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्तशक्तिकं। श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। जन्माद्यस्य तन्मयादितरतश्चार्थे सुभिज्ञस्वराट् तेने ब्रह्म हृदय आदि कवये मुह्यन्ति यत्सूरयः। तेजो वारिमृदां यथा विनिमयो यत्र त्रिसर्गो मृषा धाम्ना स्वेन सदा निरस्तकुहकं सत्यं परं धीमहि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। So we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 27th chapter, verse number 16. And Lord Kapila is continuing to give his instructions to his mother about the process of God realization. And he explained first how to understand the presence of the soul within this body, which is very difficult because we identify with the body and we don't consider ourselves as separate from the body. So he gave two different examples. One was of the light reflecting inside, and the other one which we were reading yesterday is about the deep sleep. That how in the deep sleep we don't perceive anything. There are no dreams, no knowledge of anything. But when we wake up, we remember that we slept very nicely. So how do we remember if there was no one to perceive anything? Because you don't remember something which you did not perceive. So for that he said that evam pratyavarmisya asau atmanam pratipadyati, that when one deliberates like this, then one can understand the presence of atma or soul in the body. Sahankarasya dravyasya yavasthanam anungram. But it happens only when the soul is identifying with the ego. In the deep sleep we do not identify with our ego, therefore we do not know anything. So basically there is ignorance in deep sleep. That's why it is called a manifestation of tamoguna. But there is also some experience of happiness, and that we remember later on, that experience. So that remembrance naturally implies that there is a perceiver even in deep sleep. And since our bodies, senses, mind, intelligence, and even our ego is not functioning at that time, so this experience obviously is not based on any sense perception. So that is understood to be the presence of the soul, and that's what is being described here in this verse. So Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti, he comments, he says, Nanu sushuptau na kinchid anubhuyate. He says, why do you say that there is presence of soul in deep sleep? Because in deep sleep we do not experience anything. This is our experience every night, that we don't experience anything in deep sleep. So then how to understand that there is the presence of soul? So this doubt is raised. So for that he says, Naivam sukham aham asvapsam na kinchid avedisam iti vishesh jnanam vina kevalasya atmane pratisandhanat. So he says it's not true that we do not experience anything, because we have the experience of not experiencing anything. This is also an experience, although it is not a positive experience, but it is also an experience that you don't experience anything. You can experience pain, you can experience pleasure, and if you don't experience any of these things, that is also an experience. So he says that we have this basically two types of experience in deep sleep. One is that I slept happily, there was no disturbance, no dream, nothing. And number two, I did not know anything, means ignorance bliss. So two things are experienced in deep sleep. Number one, ignorance. Number two, happiness. And therefore there has to be someone who is experiencing them. So there is no specific knowledge of any specific object. That is a fact. But that knower who is not having any specific knowledge, that is the soul. Kincha sahankarasya bhutendriyadi sanghatasya dehasya yavasthanam ashvaya yameva jivatmanam ashritya ahankaradayo bhogyeshu visheshu pravartante. And this entity who is existing in the deep sleep, this is the shelter of the body. Body is functioning because of its presence. If there is no soul in the body, then body will not function. So although in deep sleep we do not experience anything, but still we are alive. We are breathing, the pulse is moving, the blood is circulating. So all these things are happening because the soul is present. If the soul goes out of the body, then body will not function. So therefore body works because of the presence of the soul. And it's called here as Ahankarasya Dravasya Avasthanam, the shelter or support. And it is only by the support of this that Ahankar, the ego, etc. are able to enjoy later on when they come in contact. When the soul identifies with the ego and you are in your wakeful state, then ego can experience happiness and distress, pleasure and pain and so on. तथा यैव जीवात्मा अनुग्रह स्वीय भोक्तृत्व लक्षण धर्म प्रदानाद अनुग्रही. So this jivatma, this is the anugrahya, or this is what needs actually the grace, because it is the one which is bound here in this material world. So in these 16 verses, Lord Kapila, he explained the process how to realize the self. So on this, Devhuti is asking some questions, beginning from verse number 17. And she says that Devhuti Ruvacha Purusham Prakritir Brahman Na Vimunchati Karhichit Anyonya Pashriyatvat Chanityatvadaniyo Prabhu Yathagandhasya Bhumescha Na Bhavo Vitirekatah Apamrasasya Cha Yatha Tatha Buddhe Parasya Cha Akartuhu Karam Bandhoyam Purushasya Yadashrayah Guneshu Satsu Prakritehe Kaivalyam Te Shvatah Katham Kvachit Tattva Marsena Nivrittam Bhayamulvanam Anivritta Nimittatvat Punaha Pratyavatistate. So now she is raising an interesting question, and the question is that, say that this Prakriti or this material nature, it never leaves the Purusha, soul. So how, her question is that how there can be liberation. So first of all, Purusha and Prakriti both are eternal and both are together and both are dependent on each other. Body is dependent on the soul, because without body the soul cannot function. Without soul the body cannot function either. If body is not there, then soul does not perceive anything, as we know. You go in deep sleep, there is no perception of anything. Okay, you remain in your own ignorance. But you do not perceive anything, and therefore there is no possibility of getting rid of this ignorance. You can remain sleeping like a stone. And without soul, body has no meaning. So both are helping each other. In Sankhya philosophy they give the example of lame woman and blind man. So they both need help of each other. So the man is sitting on the shoulder of the woman, and the man is lame and the woman is blind. So then he is guiding, but she is walking. So soul is like that. Soul is lame because it cannot function, cannot do anything without body. And body needs light on the soul. So both are mutually dependent. So therefore he says that Prakriti will never leave the Purusha. The matter will never leave the soul. So how is it possible that one can have liberation? So Purusham Prakriti Brahman na vimunchati karichit anyanya pashatvacha nityatvadanita. Now if one of them was temporary, then it was possible that it will die and then he will be released from that. But both are eternal. Prakriti also never dies. Matter always exists, because it only undergoes changes, modification, and it is always there. It can go from unmanifest to manifest, and manifest to unmanifest, but it remains. Prakriti is always there. Prakriti Purushalcha Vidhu Anado Bhavati. Krishna says Prakriti and Purusha both are anadi, both are beginningless. Both have no beginning. So they will remain together. And that's why sometimes we are called Nitya Baddha, right? Eternally bound. because they have been together eternally. Even if you give up this gross body, the subtle body remains with us. As Krishna explains in 15th chapter that the soul lives along with this, just like the air lives with the fragrance, Vayurgandhi Vashayat. Like that the soul lives with the subtle body. So Mudhananu Pashyanti Pashyanti Gana Chakshusha. The foolish people do not understand this, but those who have the eye of knowledge, they understand this. So if this is the situation, then how can there be liberation? Then she gives an example. Yatha gandhasya bhumesya na bhavo vyatirit. So just like the earth has fragrance. Fragrance is the quality of earth. So it is not possible to separate them. Not separate fragrance from earth. It is the quality. It's like sweetness is the quality of the sugar. You cannot take out sweetness from the sugar unless you destroy it. You can burn it and turn it into acid, then there is no sweetness, but there is also no sugar left. So fragrance and earth are together, or the taste of water. So just as they are always together, cannot be separated, like that Prakriti and Purusha, they cannot be separated also. And akartuhu karam bandhoyam purushasya adashraya guneshu satsu prakritihi kavalyam teshu prakriti. So this soul who is not doing anything, and yet he has become bound by taking shelter of Prakriti or the matter. So the question is that how will it become free from the gunas of Prakriti? Without doing anything, he is bound. If you do something and you become bound, then how to not become bound? You don't do that. But if you are bound without doing anything, then there is nothing you can undo to get rid of it. If you eat something and you get a headache, then don't eat that. But if you are getting without eating anything, then someone says stop eating, stop what? So how is it possible that soul who is not doing anything and he has become bound by matter, by Prakriti, by this material body, so how he will become free from this? What can be done? Then someone says that you can deliberate, you can understand philosophically, and then you can become free from the fear. Kvachit tattva amarshena nivritam bhayamulbanam anivritta nimittattvat pune pratyavatishtati. So he says you can maybe feel liberated for some time by deliberation, but again it comes back. Because where will it go? So this is a question asked. Interesting question. So Sri Vishnath Chakravarti Thakur, he gives commentary. Says, Nanu bhaktairapi jnana vairagyadibhir moksha durlabhe iti yatra yuktima. He says that what to speak of those people who are following karma yoga, jnana yoga, ashtanga yoga. Says even devotees, it is very difficult for them to attain moksha by following the path of jnana and vairagya. So why is that? Anyonyeti purusha shaktimatvat vishwa srishtiyadi lilartham swashaktim prakritim upashrayate प्रकृतिरपि शक्तित्वात् स्वीयं पुरुषम् आश्रयते एवेत्यर्थे द्वयोर एकतरस्य नश्वरत्वे विवंशतु नाम तच्च नैत्याह नित्यः. So he is applying the meaning of Purusha on the Supreme Lord. He says that the Lord is there and the Lord is Shaktiman, he has energy, he is power, potent. And he performs the act of creation, destruction, maintenance, etc. by the help of Prakriti. And Prakriti or material energy belongs to him, so therefore she also takes care, takes shelter of the Lord. So they both are helping each other and they both are indestructible. So who is going to leave whom? So Prakriti will not leave the Purusha and Purusha will not leave the Prakriti because they are eternal. And Vyatirekto bhava satta nasti gandhasya kadachit pakshya darshanam drishtantam. This is the example given is that the fragrance does not exist without earth. And then why the example of water is given? Because sometimes you may not smell, like wood is there. There is fragrance in wood also. You can feel it if you saw it. And you can feel. But you don't feel the fragrance all the time. So then he gives another example of water and taste. Whenever you put water in your mouth, you will have a taste. Here you may feel fragrance and you may have to rub it to get the fragrance. But water taste is always there. So like that they never leave each other. So Prakriti Parasya Purushasya, in the same way Prakriti never leaves the Purusha. So then what is the point? Why are you saying this? He says Tatha kim mataha akartur ye guna ashvayo yasya sateshu prakritir guneshu sapsu purushasya jivasya ateva hetu katham kyavala. So then he says that how is it possible for the jiva, even if Lord is not giving up Prakriti, who is potent, who is powerful, then how jiva can give up? Is this meaning to these verses. Those verses can be seen both ways. The Purusha can be seen as a living being, conditioned soul, or it can be seen as Paramatma. Both ways. So he has applied it on Paramatma. Akartu ye guna ashrayo yasya sateshu prakritir guneshu satsu purushasya jivasya ateva hetu katham. So Jiva is not doing anything, yet he is taking shelter of the Prakriti and the Gunas. So how can there be liberation for him? Ateva kvachin nivritta prayasya api sansar bhayasya udbhavo drishyate. So therefore he says that sometimes, even if it is seen that some people have become advanced in spiritual life and they have become free from the influence of the gunas of Prakriti, then they also seem to be troubled by the fear. So why? Because they have not actually become completely free. Sometimes they are situated in high goodness and then they feel as if they are free, but then they again become influenced. So how is it possible that one can get rid of this? This is the question which has been asked. So now he replies. Lord Kapila said, Sri Bhagavana Uvacha Animitta Nimittena Swadharmena Malatmana तीव्रया मयि भक्त्या च सुत्संहृत्या चिरम् ज्ञानेन दृष्टतत्त्वेन वैराग्येन बलेयसा तपोयुक्तेन योगेन तीव्रेण आत्मसमाधिना प्रकृति पुरुषस्य हि यद्दह्यमाना तु हर्निशम् तिरोभवित्रीन् संकैरग्नयोरिव अर्णिः भुक्तभोगा परित्यक्ता दृष्टदोषा च नित्यश नेश्वरस्य शुभं दत्ते स्वयमहिम्नि स्थितस्य च. So he says that it is possible to get rid of it. Says that just as fire, it generates from wood, but it also burns the wood. It's a very interesting phenomena that fire burns its own mother, right? It is generated from the wood, and the wood is consumed by the fire itself. It says in the same way, if one performs one's duties without any desire for the goal, for fruits, niskam karma, then one's heart will become purified. And then by hearing my pastimes, by engaging in hearing, Tivraya, Bhakti, strong devotion, then one will have realization of the absolute reality. And with this realization, one will become renounced. And then by meditation and by the fixing of the mind, this ignorance will become weaker and weaker day by day. And then slowly it will be lost. And then what will happen? Bhukta bhoga parityakta drishta dosa cha nityasa. Then the person who has given up his sense pleasures because he has seen the defects in these sense pleasures, then he will become situated in his own self and become liberated, and then this prakriti will not be able to cause any disturbance to such a person. So in other words, the question which was asked was, how is it possible that somebody can become free, because prakriti will always be with the purusha. So he says that this prakriti will become weak and weak, weaker and weaker slowly, if one performs one's duty without any desire for material benefits, performs niskam karma, and engages in devotional activities of hearing and so on, then prakriti will become weak because of the knowledge and realization which one will have, and then slowly it will leave, just like the wood gets burnt by the fire. So this fire of realization will burn prakriti. Then person will come to realize that I have enjoyed so many sense objects, but I have never become satisfied with them, and I am only suffering. Then he will lose interest in them. And then when he will lose interest in them, then he will become situated in one's own true self. So this, of course, as we have been seeing, this is description from jnana point of view, path of jnana. Self-realization is the basis or the goal. So Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti says that he matar na prakriti jivasya bandhetu kintu tadiya gunadhyase. Because the cause of our bondage is not prakriti, material body, ego or anything, but identification with it. So it doesn't matter whether prakriti lives or Prakriti is there or not there, if you can give up this adhyas, this attachment, identification, then Prakriti is not going to disturb you. The problem comes because we identify with our ego and then with the body and then things related with the body. And then we become caught in this material world. That is the bondage. So soul is free to begin with, but he is looking at the ego and then thinks that this is me. It's like moon reflecting in the lake, and then start identifying with the reflection. So like that you identify with the ego, and then whatever is happening to the ego, then you think this is happening to me. So that identification has to be given up. Therefore he says that na prakriti jivasya bandhetu. That material nature is not the cause of bondage. Tadiya gunadhyas eva. But adhyas means superimposition or identification with the gunas of prakriti. And such avidyakrita eva. And that is because of ignorance. So the real problem is that we are ignorant. We don't have knowledge. And because of ignorance we identify. So if a person takes some kind of drug and forgets who he or she is, and then starts thinking herself as someone else, then it's not that she has become someone else. It is out of ignorance she is thinking. If she is brought back to her normal state, then she will know who she is. So in the same way, because of ignorance, avidya, the soul is identifying with the material ego and the gunas of Prakriti, and then he is fallen into this bondage. Ateva avidya nivrittau moksho bhatte. So if this ignorance can be removed, then one is free. Because just as that person is thinking that she has become someone else when she is not, she is only thinking. So if that can be changed, then there is nothing that you have to do. If there is a prince who is lost and does not know that he is prince, and he is wandering like a poor person, trying to even find food for himself. So if he is told that you are prince, then he doesn't have to do anything. He can come back home and he is with the father and he has all the wealth. So in the same way, now we are ignorant of our true state, and therefore we have lost our opulence, our majesty, and we have become poor. So we need to become situated in our knowledge as part and parcel of God, conscious being, and we are liberated. क्वचित भयस्य उद्भवस्तु साधन वैकल्यात् इति अभिप्रेत्य साधन अतिशयं कथयन् परिहरति. So why then people who are even knowledgeable, they become fearful? So he says because they have not become realized yet, and they may not be strong in their practice. So therefore he says that one has to engage in staunch practice. Tivraya means intense. Nimittam phalam tadabhava animittam eva nimittam pravartana. So he says animitta nimittena swadharmena. Swadharma means one's prescribed duty, and you can do your duty in two ways. One is you do with a motive that you want to attain some benefit, and when you do it just because you are supposed to do it. So nimitta means cause and animitta means causeless. So doing your duty, swadharma, without any cause, without any motive, then what will happen? Then one's heart becomes purified. Tena amala shuddha atma antikaram. So what does it mean heart becomes purified? Purification of the heart means giving up desires for enjoyment. Usually we are performing activities to gain some fruit, some outcome, some result. And then when the result is coming, we are happy. If it is not coming, then we are unhappy. And therefore we remain bound by the result. But if you are not caring for the result and you perform your duty for the sake of duty, then it doesn't matter whether you are so-called successful or not successful, because you just do your duty. But then you don't become disturbed, you become situated in an equanimous state of mind. And then you can think properly, you can hear properly, you can understand properly. When our minds are disturbed, and disturbance can be both ways. If you are successful, then that is one type of disturbance. And if you are failure, then you are another type of disturbance. So in both states you don't think properly. And therefore you do not understand. So that's why Krishna says that Karma Yoga will lead to Jnana Yoga. Sarva karma khilam parthe jnane parisamapati. That if one does karma properly, then it will lead to knowledge. But then only you can see things. It's like if you shake your head very fast, you cannot see things clearly. You have to see something, you have to make your head stable, your eyes stable. So like that, if our mind is agitated all the time, it cannot perceive things clearly. So you have to make it peaceful. So what disturbs the mind is the attachment to karma phala, the outcome of our actions. So that's why Krishna gave the formula karmanyevadhikarastu ma phaleshu phaleshu. That you perform your duty and don't be attached to the results of the duty. Because this attachment to the result, this is a disturbance. And in the disturbed state, we are lost, then we are fearful, we are in anxiety, we are in stress, unnecessarily. So such a person obviously cannot be self-realized. So that's why he said that sometimes people who are in knowledge, they may become fearful because they also lose their status of equanimity. When the heart is clean, then what happens? Antakarna yata syat tena tivriya svabhava deva sarvatasteja sunya shut samvritya mat katha savana parapushti. Then one can engage in devotional activity. So to perform devotional activity, your mind has to be peaceful. Because devotional activity means to work for the pleasure of the Lord. So if we ourselves are hungry, then how can we give food to somebody else? And even if we are giving, we are thinking, when this person will finish and I eat. So our consciousness will not be on service, but on our own satisfaction. So therefore, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma, न शोचति न कांक्षति समय सर्वेषु bhutesu mad bhakti lavate param. Krishna says that when one becomes Brahma Bhuta, Brahman realized, becomes Prasannatma, satisfied, then he is not Sochati Kamshati. He is not desiring anything, he is not lamenting for any loss, because he is satisfied. Either we are desiring something which we lack, or we are crying something which we had and we lost it. So this person does not do that, because he is Prasannatma, he is balanced, Samaya Sarveshu Bhutesu, see everyone is equal, then he attains Bhakti. So this is the platform of Bhakti, only such person can perform Bhakti. One who is disturbed, what Bhakti will he or she do? They will try to first remove that disturbance, because they themselves are burdened. So therefore he says that when the mind is purified, mind is peaceful, then he can engage in intense devotion of hearing. Tivrena bhaktya sruta samvritaya. So there are various types of bhaktis which can be performed. Most important is hearing. Because by hearing we understand and we become free from our doubts, our faith increases, we become more inclined to perform devotion and also give up non-devotional activities. So therefore he says Tivraya Sruta Samvritaya. Specifically he talks about hearing. And Chiram, you do it for a long time. Then Jnanena Drishta Tattvena Vairagyena Bhavisa. So what will happen? Then one will have Jnana, one will have knowledge. And one will have realization, Drishta Tattva. You will see the reality. And then you will become renounced, detached. Detachment comes with knowledge. If you understand that smoking is not good, then you don't smoke. You have real understanding. If you know something is not good for you, if you have this knowledge, then you become detached from that. So with the knowledge we understand that I cannot become happy by material sense pleasures. यही संस्पर्शा भोगा दुख योनि एवते आद्यंतवंत कौन्तेय न तेषु भूतेषु. Krishna says that all these it's not disconnecting. Sense pleasures which come from the contact of the senses and sense objects, they are the source of trouble. All our troubles are emanating because of this desire to enjoy sense objects. Because the fact is that these sense objects, they only give me trouble. Because I become conditioned by them. You eat something, you relish it, then what happens? It leaves a samskara, an impression in your heart and your mind. Then you desire it again. So then you work to get it. Next time you may get, you may not get it. If you don't get it, you are frustrated. If you get it, it may not be same like before. Then you are troubled. If it is same, then it makes even deeper samskara, and you become even more conditioned. Then you get addicted to it, that you cannot live without it. Then it starts bothering you. Now whether you need to eat or not eat, once you become addicted, then you must eat. And if you don't eat it, then your body doesn't function well. So this is how people become addicted to things. It is not addicted only to smoking and drinking, but there are so various types of addictions people have. Could be to good things also. Can also become addicted to getting up early in the morning. That can also be an addiction. So there are so many types of conditioning. Some may be helpful, but ultimately one has to be free from all this. So some are an obstacle, and there are two types of vrittis, klishta and aklishta. But ultimately one should be in control over oneself and the mind. Otherwise then you become like a machine. Even if you are following something good, you do it mechanically, not with the intention for what it is meant. So therefore he says that when the heart is clean, then one engages in this intense devotion. Sarvatas tejasunya svut samvritya mat katha saman parapushti. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that the most powerful of all devotional services is mat katha saman, hearing about my katha. This is most strong activity. And it is the easiest of all the devotional activities which you can do without anything is hearing. Because in everything else you have to do something, in hearing you have to just sit and hear. There cannot be anything more easy than this, than hearing, right? If you have to chant, you have to move your tongue. But in hearing you don't do even that. It's the easiest, and this is the most powerful. Still, people don't want to do that. They are engaged in all kinds of other katha. So, prakriti linga deha purushasya evi sadhanir dahiyamana abhibhuyamana tiro bhavati agneriti. So then what will happen, that jnanena drishtatattvena vairagyena baliyasa tapo yuktena yogena tivrena atma samadhina. Then one will become renounced, and one will be austere and will be fixed in yoga, means the mind will become fixed. When your mind is not disturbed by sense pleasures, then it becomes fixed on the object. And prakriti purushasya dahyamana to aharnisam. Then this prakriti, it becomes slowly weak. Tiro bhavitri sankai agni or iva agni. It's like the fire which burns the wood. So this is what it describes. Prakriti linga deha. Prakriti here means the subtle body. Purushasya evi sadhanir dahyamana vibhuyamana tiro bhavati. So now this subtle body becomes overpowered by the practice. What does it mean it becomes overpowered? Because subtle body is having all the vasanas, the subliminal impressions are lying in the subtle body. And these are the ones which give rise to thoughts and desires. And once the desire comes, then we act on that. If we are not in control of our mind, then we just make a decision. If mind is very powerful, then the desire comes in the mind, and then ego makes link with that, and then takes a decision to act on it. and then you become engaged. So by performing sadhana, these impressions, these latent desires, they become weak and weak and weak slowly. And then they're almost like fried seeds. Like you fry the seeds, then they don't germinate. So then these impressions, these samskaras inside us, they do not give rise to desires. Or even if the desire comes, then it is very weak. It is not very powerful, and it overpowers you. Sometimes you may have experienced that you get desire for something, it is very overpowering. That your mind is completely occupied and you cannot think of anything else. And everything else drops. And your intelligence is just working how to satisfy this desire. Because intelligence also is kidnapped by the mind. It becomes subservient to the mind. And then you make plans, then you get very good intelligent ideas. And then you act on that. And this is also one of the reasons that you perform good activities. They do not perform such deep impressions as if you perform some illegal activity. Because when you perform some good activity, you do not concentrate very much. Because you are not worried. If you do some illegal activity, you are worried that if you get caught, you will be in trouble. So you concentrate very much. You are very aware that I want to do it and not get caught. And since you do it with such awareness and consciousness, it gives very deep samskara. Because samskaras are, the intensity of the samskara depends how intensely we are aware when we do that activity. You are walking on the road, you see many things. Everything is not creating a deep samskara because you may be absorbed in something else. But you see some person and person is very appealing to you. You look at that person, male, female, then that creates a very deep samskara. You remember that person even after 10 days. You may have seen many other people walking on the road, you don't remember whom you saw. So depending on how intensely or how much you are absorbed in a particular activity, it creates a samskara like that. So when we do illegal things, we are very much absorbed in that, and therefore it creates deep samskara, and because it creates deep samskara, it is not easy to get rid of them. That's why you have to do very intense sadhana. But usually sadhana we do like half dead. We are chanting and reading newspaper also. But when we read newspaper, then we are fully absorbed. Then our mind is not going anywhere. But when we chant, then we think of 50 other things. So that's why it doesn't work so quickly. You have to do it for a long time. For that reason he says Tivriya, intense. Because so many powerful things are lying inside us and they have to be removed. So then arani kastham agnir yatha kasthade utpadya kastham dayati tatheva jnanam linga dehad utpadya tameva dayati. So he says just as the fire which comes from the wood, it burns the wood, in the same way this knowledge which you will get, it comes from the subtle body, because knowledge is in the subtle body, and then it will destroy the subtle body also. As the knowledge which we have is in the mind, in the chitta. So that realization will also come there, and then it is going to kill all those samskaras there. This time. The fire comes from the wood and it burns the wood. So this is the process. I'll stop here if there is any question. Yes.
You mentioned about when we perform bhakti, we should have a peaceful mind in the services. In some places we see that bhakti is independent and that we don't need anything to perform it. How should we understand this paradox? Is there different stages of bhakti?
Yeah, different stages. And when it is said bhakti is independent, obviously he is not talking about bhakti which is done with all the mixture of other things. Bhakti is not depending on anything, but if you do it, then there will be no disturbance anyway. Because suppose you are serving somebody, you are serving your teacher or your guru, and you are absorbed in that, then your mind will not be disturbed. The disturbance will go away. Bhakti itself will make your mind renounced and peaceful. But if you are doing that, but suppose you are not able to do that, you don't like this, and you may say I am doing bhakti, but your mind is running everywhere else. So then you need to practice. Otherwise bhakti doesn't need any other thing. Because bhakti means that absorption is there.
It differs on the quality of your bhakti.
Yeah. So therefore in the beginning we need to do sadhana. But if you are already able to perform, then you just do it. And then it does not depend on anything.
Also, another question. I thought it was very interesting the point you made about not being attached even to the good things. You mentioned waking up early. So I would ask you to elaborate a little bit on that because I thought it was very interesting.
Well, what happens that people they become attached to a rule. And that becomes a habit, and then they forget what was the purpose of this rule. So that also becomes an obstacle. That's why Rupa Goswami in Updesamrita says Niyamagraha, that this attachment to the rule, this is also one of the obstacles in bhakti. Because then you just follow the rule, and that may be actually causing disturbance somewhere in bhakti.
Maybe some pride will come in.
Yeah, that pride will come, that is another thing. Those are other problems. That you think you are better than others because you are able to do it and criticize others. So these types of problems come. But even without pride it can be problematic. Maybe your health is not good. You are sick. You have fever. But now because the rule is there that you have to get up and go for puja or whatever, and you do it and it may actually make your health worse, and that will become an obstacle to your devotion because then you cannot do other things. You may have to take leave.
Satyanarayana, I've heard for many years people who are addicted to drugs and alcohol, they will say, I know this is killing me and I need to give it up, but I can't give it up.
Because they have gone to a stage now that they have no control over. So now they actually have the knowledge, but they are helpless. They don't have any control over their mind and senses. So they have gone to a very intense state of addiction.
So even if they hear like the absolute truth, for example, they can say, well, I can understand that, makes sense, but I can't do that.
Yeah, then they have to slowly do the sadhana. That's why he's talking about the sadhana. So they have to follow certain principles. They cannot give it up immediately, but they can also do it. So first they have to understand this understanding has to be very clear in their mind that I want to give up. One thing is that they are unable to give up, but first they must make a resolve that I want to give up. But if they don't make that resolve, then nothing will work. So that resolve they have to make. And that can be made by hearing, understanding, and they realize that I am killing myself. So therefore first thing is the sankalpa. That resolve, this will that I want to give it up. So of course he wants to give it up, but he has no control. And then he will endeavor for it.
And how also we should understand about our own will and the mercy of Krishna, mercy of God. How should we depend more on our will, on the mercy?
No, you act as you have what you have to do, and you depend on the mercy. Mamanusmara yuddhacha. Krishna says, you remember me and fight. So whatever abilities he has given to us, you also, that is grace of Krishna. But we utilize them. Now that when it all depends on the grace and there is nothing I can do. You fight, perform your duty, and then he will bless you.
I recall a time when I was working with this man, and I'd never seen him sober. So we made an appointment, or an agreement that I would come in 2 hours earlier. And so I was at this clinic at 8 o'clock, and I says, and I want you to show up, and I says, I want you not to take a drink before you come to see me. And he was on time. He was there at 8 o'clock. But he was so drunk. And then I said, oh, William, I said, you promised me that you wouldn't drink. He said, no, I said, I thought you would not drink. He says, well, I told you I'd be here at 8. I didn't tell you I would not be drunk. He says, I can't help it, Miss Warren.
Yeah, but at least he did one thing. Yes.
I find it interesting you're describing this deep sleep state. And it seems that one is losing the perception of time in deep sleep.
Yeah.
And it made me think that it made me more easily understood this period of unmanifested stage when everything is lying in the body of Mahavishnu. Sometimes it doesn't really matter if deep sleep is just for 20 minutes or 2 trillions of years. But once one is losing perception of time,
It doesn't matter.
he wakes up in 1 hour, and after many kalpas, it's just more easy for me to understand it. It's like realization.
Alright. Thank you.
Zijn de vrouw is van België. En Lucie, maar haar naam is anders. Is a DVD from the ashram. She's from Belgium, but she lives in an ashram in Canada.
Yeah.
In Marcia,
Which ashram?
British Columbia. In British Columbia.
Yes.
Which ashram?
We have a spiritual master, Gurudev Sanandata. So as we are coming here, and he knew that we were meeting you, so we asked us to offer you something that we are doing in the ashram. There are many. There are things that we are doing. Let's say the ashram, and
I'll see it.
okay.
Thank you.
And also I have a little
DVD.
A little DVD. It's about it lasts about 4 minutes something. So he told me also to show it to you on my computer if it works.
Yeah, you can
So-
show me.
Hmm?
You can show me.
Okay, when could we do this?
If you have your computer, I can see it now.
Okay. It's in the room. So
This
yeah,
building?
it's in just beside, but not this building, just beside.
You can show me tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
okay.
Huh? Okay. Yes. Okay.
His greetings to his blessings.
And it's a pleasure to meet you.
To know.
Tu dis, je peux appeler français, que je parle bien.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
doesn't.
to understand.
She doesn't speak any
This is
English.
speak English, just
Don't understand. So.
yes.
But your teaching is
Really,
in the same
in the same way to
of our
Teacher.
yes. About the self-realization, samskara, our dreams, some
Yes.
difficult to get rid of.
to be natural,
Mm.
to be in the present.
So this is the work we try to do.
Good.
Okay. So we
Thank you.
there is a lecture every night.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we you permit to come, it's okay.
Most welcome.
Yes. Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.